I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
The Democrats are now controlled by the Jihad Squad, led by AOC, the little communist from New York City.
Perhaps we can all be forgiven thinking that conservatives are a broken record, or that Donald Trump is one responsible for it.
Can Trumppublicans please stop calling everyone they disagree with a communist? Seriously.
But you might be slightly amused or horrified just how long this script has been in use. Ask yourself if this doesn't sound familiar. Both the US and Soviet governments are controlled by the same furtive conspiratorial cabal of internationalists, greedy bankers, and corrupt politicians. If left unexposed, the traitors inside the US government would betray the country's sovereignty to the United Nations for a collectivist New World Order managed by one world socialist government. I mean, they even thought the Soviet government was being controlled by a cabal. That's a new level. Now, Donnie isn't even clever enough to come up with this stuff. He picked it up from his major donors. It really hasn't changed in 65 years, even when its most probable phantasm, the USSR, is long dead. The John Birch liturgy, for lack of a better term, has been universal to U.S. conservatism since 1958. But this isn't surprising, since the progeny of the founding members are the patriarchs of today's terrifying conservative movement, with its parallel structures of media, education, society, religion, politics, law, and economy, if not reality itself, to its host society. I've had the sense for a number of years now that it's something more than propaganda in the service of wealth, because it has taken on a life of its own. It is enculturated and industrialized schizophrenic ideation, at least as disassociated from reality as their claims regarding wokeness. It has been transmitted from father to son and their client retinue of businessmen dependent on their largesse, a giant country club of obsequious souls willing to climb the social ladder and secure billionaire largesse. Today's conservative movement, spearheaded by the Koch network, can be said to have been launched by Lewis Powell's most infamous memo, which unsurprisingly recapitulates the basic liturgy in slightly transformed ways, but it hits all the high points. Sources of attack. The sources are varied and diffused. They include, not unexpectedly, the communists, the leftists, and other revolutionaries who would destroy the entire system, both political and economic. These extremists of the left are far more numerous, better financed, and increasingly are more welcomed and encouraged by other elements of society than ever before in our history. They have turned their own schizophrenic storm in a teacup into a menace to the entire American government because they have so much money. Making the point, yet again, that enormous wealth concentration is itself an existential threat to the stability of society because one or even a handful of immensely wealthy individuals have the resources to afflict their schizophrenia on society as a whole. This isn't good. Society shouldn't allow itself to become victim to a few people's delusion. That schizophrenic industry is funding Project 2025 and the Red Caesar movement. This movement will not break, will not falter until either it collapses of its own accord, which I kind of doubt at this point because it is institutionalized so much. But it does need to be called out for what it is. It's a psychotic episode, writ large. There is another observation to be made here in that the people recruited into the conservative cause are often individuals with rather extraordinary personality traits. Just think of the panoply of GOP talent out there, or any number of conservative pastors. They all share sort of a fundamental detachment from reality or a certain fundamental paranoia in their outlook.
And I tell Christians that one of the reasons we need to reject wokeism is because it actually robs us from our ability to suffer for Christ. You know, if all of my persecution is only as a result of what my country of origin, my skin color, my socioeconomic status, my gender, my sexuality, if all my suffering is because of that, when do I suffer for Jesus?
Which is not the sort of psychological profile we generally have in mind when thinking about local, state, or even national leadership. In fact, it is quite terrifying on that basis alone.